Okay, guys, welcome back. This is proving triangles that are congruent. This is the proof part. We're going to do it by a T-chart, okay, just because that's what we did in the past. It's kind of like how the state test is worked out as well. We will look at some maybe flowchart proofs in the future, but for right now, we're going to construct a T-chart proof, okay? So here's our first problem. You are going to have to pause the video. I want to try and make this as short as possible. I'm going to go through 4 types of proof problems, okay? Each one of them has something different, so you got to kind of get like a variety here, okay? So here we go. We're given that the following is true, and now we're trying to prove that this triangle is congruent to this guy, okay? First step, when I'm approaching this, whatever's in the given, I'm going to mark it congruent over here. You have the picture, use it to your advantage, okay? So AB, okay, is congruent to CD, so I'm going to mark it with one line. Now, AD is congruent to CB. I will mark those with 2, just because, well, I don't want them to be confused with this, right? So these guys, pardon me, are congruent. All right, now, I'm going to create my T-chart. This side are all my statements. This side, I'm going to list my reasons. Now, I need to have something to go off of here. So currently, are these 2 triangles congruent? No, okay? I don't have enough information here, to be perfectly honest. However, in the picture, there is something that's congruent that I didn't mark, okay? And the given doesn't tell me this, but I know this is a fact. Look at both triangles here, okay? They share a side, and it's this guy right here. See how they share it? So that's another place where both triangles are congruent. So I'm going to mark that with 3. Now, taking a look at this, I can see by inspection that these 2 triangles are the same. And to prove it, we could say that they're congruent by side, side, side. All the sides of this triangle are the same as all the sides of this triangle. Okay? So as a recap, whatever is here, mark it in the picture. Then mark anything that's congruent that you know for certain. And that's usually what? Vertical angles or reflexive sides. Remember, reflexive is just a fancy word to say, hey, they share this guy. Okay? Now, here's the cool part. I'm going to use this as a way to make my proof. Okay? So let's go ahead and do this. So step 1, okay, I'm going to list the side that's congruent. And here's the thing. When you're doing these proofs, you're just telling me what's congruent in the picture. You're just writing it out here. So that's why it's so important to mark it. Doesn't matter what order. So I'm going to say that AB is congruent to CD. The reason why they're congruent is because it's listed up here in the given. So I'm going to put given for that. Now, I'm going to put an S here and circle it. That way I know I listed one side congruent. And I'll put a little check mark here as well to show that one side's congruent. I already marked it. Now, before I reach my conclusion, I got to tell the person reading this that, hey, there's 2 other sides congruent before I can conclude. So let's continue. Second, I'm going to list that AD is congruent to CB. And once again, that is a given that's in this section here. And since I have another set of sides that are marked congruent, I'm going to put an S and circle it, and I'm going to check it off up here. That way I know what's left for me to say. Now, according to this little checklist that I have one more side that I got to say that's congruent. That's one thing I didn't mention yet. That's this guy, right? See how BD is the same in both triangles? Now, this step's a little bit different. It's going to seem redundant. I'm going to say BD is congruent to BD. And you're probably thinking, huh? Why am I doing that? Well, it's for this reason, sorry. BD in this triangle is the same as BD in this triangle, right? That's why it looks redundant. Okay, I'm pretty much repeating myself here. The reason why they're congruent is because that's what's shared. So I'm going to write the word reflexive here. Okay, the reflexive property is why these guys are congruent. Okay, what I'm going to put in parentheses here is I'm going to put the word share. Okay, Okay, they share this side. All right, that's why I can say they're congruent. I'm going to put an S here and circle it. We'll check it off up here. Now, did I state everything that's congruent from this picture? I did. I know that two ways. One, my proof says triple S. See that? Also, my little checklist here, I marked everything off. So I'm good. So now for my final step, I can officially say this guy, right? I can say that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CDB by side, side, side. And the proof's done. Okay? That's it. A lot of times people get confused because they're like, okay, what do I write first? I don't know what to do first. Get out of your own mind for a second, okay? Draw on the picture. And then whatever you drew on here, mark it here. Isn't that what I just did? Every single part that's congruent, I wrote it down here. Most of it was given to us. That was the reason. There's only one that was reflexive, right? That's something we had to mark because it's what they shared. And then we concluded that these guys are congruent by side, side, side. Sorry. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to be 4 steps. It can be more steps. I just want to be very clear on that. A lot of proofs, like, well, Mr. McCullough, it's more than 4 steps. Is that correct? Yeah, it's fine. Okay? Just a lot of the ones we did in class just kind of ended on 4 steps. Okay, problem 1 done. Moving on. Problem 2. Okay? So once again, you're going to have to pause the video so you can write this down. Okay? All right. So once again, my first step, whatever's in the given, I'm going to draw on the picture. Okay? So let's look. AB is parallel to ED. Okay? Parallel, that's the double bars. All right. So what I'm going to do to show that in the picture, I'm going to draw those arrows. See how I drew the arrows there? That means parallel. Okay, now here it says AC and EC are congruent. So I'll put congruent marks there. AC is congruent to EC. Okay, the given's done. Now, let me write this closer to here, sorry. Look at the picture. Is there something else congruent that I can mark? Answer is yes, I can. Here and here, we know they're vertical angles. Okay? So let's go ahead. We'll mark those. If you want to write a note, you can write a note here to remind yourself, hey, vertical angles. Sometimes that helps if you just write those little notes. Okay? Now, this triangle, I have 2 things marked congruent. This triangle, 2 things marked congruent. Ugh, I need 3 before I can decide if these are the same triangle. So what else is missing? Well, these parallel lines are screaming to me right now. Let's go back to this picture. Okay? If I have parallel lines, I have a certain type of angle. I'm going to mark it for you. Here and here. Angle B and angle D are congruent. Why? All right? The parallel lines are why. Can you guys see it? Angle B and angle D are congruent because they're alternate interior angles. Okay? Here's my transversal. BD is the transversal. Okay, that's this guy. This is BD. Okay? These 2 angles are inside the 2 parallel lines right here, and they're alternating left and right. So I'm going to put here alternate interior angles. Sorry. As a reminder. Okay, now let's look at the picture. This one here, I could see it. You see these arrows? That doesn't mean congruent. When you're trying to decide, leave them out. Don't look at them, okay? They're there to help us figure out what's congruent, and that's it. So for this triangle, I have an angle, and a side, angle, side. So A, S. Okay? That's why these triangles are congruent. By angle, side. All right. That's the tough part. It really is. Deciding what this is the toughest part. Because the rest of it, you're just going to write what you marked. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, so first step is I want to list an angle that's congruent. Okay, now I'm going to put the brakes on it. Boop. All right. You see how I have AB is parallel to ED? I want to mark that first. And the reason why I'm going to mark it first, and it's given information, okay, is because that is needed for the ulterior angles to work. So I'm going to list that first, so that way it's out of the way. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and list an angle that's congruent. Doesn't matter which one you pick. Why not B and D, right? Angle B is congruent to angle D, and that's because they're alternate interior angles. I am abbreviating, that's just to let you know, okay? That's why they were congruent, right? We wrote a little note up here so we remembered. Now, that's an angle that I marked congruent, so I'll put an A there and circle it. Up here, I'll put a little check mark indicating that I listed that. Okay, step 3. I want to list another angle. That's what's saying next on the checklist. So what else was congruent? Well, these vertical angles were congruent. So let's mark those down. Now, I can't say angle C is congruent to angle C. Okay? Technically, this outside of the triangle, that's angle C. So is this guy. There's actually 4 angle C's in the picture. I have to be more specific. So let's name this angle C from this triangle. And what I'm going to do to name it is I'm going to use these symbols, these other symbols here, these other arcs to do it. So this guy, I'm going to name it angle BCA is congruent. Now notice how I named it. I went from 2 arcs to 1 to 0. So I'm going to match it over here. 2, 1 to 0. So angle DCE. Notice angle C is in the middle. Okay, remember when we name angles, the angle we're looking at should be in the middle. Okay, so we say that they're congruent because they are vertical angles. Okay. That's another angle I listed that's congruent, so I'll put an A and circle it. I'll put a check mark up there so that way I know that I did. Okay. All right, final one. I need a side. I didn't list a side yet. Okay, so let's list those sides. Now, here's the cool part. I could read it off the picture, or it's already given to me, right? So I could just rewrite this. So AC is congruent to EC, and that was given information. There we go. Okay, all done. See how the proof literally says angle, angle, side? I listed all that information to prove it. So now my 5th and final step is I'm going to say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EDC, okay? And that's by angle, angle, side. This seems like a lot. It really does. But just go through the steps with me. You take this, draw in the picture. Mark anything else that's congruent based on that information. Decide which one of these guys makes these triangles congruent. And then whatever's listed here, list here, which is what's in the picture. Okay? Now, one thing you might notice, say, hey, wait a minute, Mr. McCullough, I just realized you separate the given. All right? That can happen. I know in the previous parallel line proofs that we did, I didn't do that. I listed all the given first. Okay? In this case, I didn't. Now, who's to say? I mean, could you write these in any order? Absolutely. The reason why I wrote it in this order is because it literally spells out angle, angle, side. So it's easier to follow. But you could scramble these steps. However, your last step should always be the proof step. Okay? That never changes. Okay, but logic-wise, if you follow it in this fashion, it's better. It really is. Okay? Think about making a PB&J sandwich. I mean, the steps on making that sandwich. I mean, could you say, peanut butter first, then jelly, and then the bread? Yeah, you could. Bad example, I know. But there's a reason why you might want to put jelly first and then the peanut butter. okay? Prevents it from the bread being soggy, that type of thing, all right? I know, weird example, but kind of like the same thing here. I listed the lines were parallel first before I said they're altered to your angles because that's needed. But anyway, okay? I think what I'm going to do, I'm deciding this now, all right? I'm going to stop here because the video right now is 15 minutes long. So I'm going to stop and I'll upload another part to do the last 2 examples. Okay, so stay tuned for the next part. All right, guys? So I'll see you in the next lesson video.